The third thing that you're going to do in color correction is going to be to apply a hue and saturation adjustment layer. You're going to use the same photo that you did for the curves adjustment layer, but we need to go ahead and rename this before we get started. So let's do a File, Save As, and here where it says Curves Adjustment Layer, we're going to rename this Hue Saturation. And then you can leave your period, your last name, and adjustment layer. Make sure you save it as a Photoshop file first. This is actually going to save the curves adjustment that you already did, and now you're just going to add to it. So we want to make sure that we are on the background layer so that we can apply our hue and saturation layer to it and not to the curves layer. First thing that we need to do is zoom in. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, Command plus, to zoom in so that I can see the little girl's eyes. Now you notice that the eyes are blue, but what we want to do here is we want to make them more blue. So we need to start off by making a selection. I'm going to use my magic wand and I am going to give it a 3-pixel feather up here in my options. And remember that the 3-pixel feather just makes it a little bit more forgiving around the edges. And I'm going to let my magic, or sorry, not my magic wand, I'm going to let my magnetic lasso tool follow the edges. I may click a little bit. Then I'm going to add to my selection, and I'm going to select her other eye as well. Okay, this one I think did a pretty good selection. The first one might need some adjustment, so I'm going to go into my quick mask mode and I'll use my brush tool. Since I do have a feathered edge, I probably want to soften my brush a little bit and just kind of, oops, I chose the wrong color. I need to make that white. I just want to clean up that edge a little bit. This one I think looks okay. And then when I'm done, I can go out of my quick mask mode and check it. And there we go. I like my selection. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do, just like we applied a curves adjustment layer, we're going to come down here to this little cookie down at the bottom, the circle that's half colored, half empty, and we're going to choose hue and saturation. It's right here in the middle. Now once you do, the properties for hue and saturation pop up, and it appears that the selection that we made has disappeared. I assure you that it's still there. In fact, if you look on your layers panel, notice how you can see those 2 little white dots. That's showing you that that's what's selected and that's what we are applying this to. Now, as I pointed out before, her eyes are naturally blue. We just want to emphasize that. So if you look up here in the properties, the first slider you see is hue. And what I want you to realize is that hue is just another name for color. So if I was to drag this slider over the green, notice now how her eyes are turning green. And if I drag it more to the left, now they're starting to turn yellow. Now, when I say yellow, remember that there's a color behind it. So it is kind of mixing with that. And then we have orange, and then we get into some violet to the right, and fuchsia and red, and looks a little demonic. So we're going to keep this right here at 0 because we don't want to change the color from blue. We just want it to be more, which takes us to our next slider. This is saturation. If we drag this to the right, it is going to put in more blue. See how much more blue? This is called saturation. This is adding more color. If I drag it to the left, it's taking color out. So it'd be like making it a black and white photo or a grayscale photo. It's desaturating it. This is saturating, it's adding more color. So right now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that that plus 20's looking okay at the moment. And then I'm going to go to my third slider, which is the lightness. Now, if you look here, you can kind of guess what this slider does. If we drag it to the left, it is going to darken the color. So it's going to add black to it. Okay, so now it's becoming more like a navy blue. Or if I go all the way, it actually becomes solid black, which looks a little creepy. If I drag it to the right of the center, it's adding white to the color. So it's still blue, but it's lightening her eyes. And now it looks a little creepy there as well. Okay, so what we probably want to do is just a little bit light. Notice that this is at a +3, which is just to the right of center. And there I can even adjust my saturation a little bit more. I'm dragging it to the right. And if we zoom out to where it's full screen, and I did that by using Command 0, I can see what it looks like and see if that looks somewhat realistic. Because we can make changes and make things look absolutely crazy, which is not always a good thing. We want this to look realistic. We're trying to bring out her features that she naturally has. So I wound up with +30 in my saturation, and I think I actually changed the lightness to +6, but I like the way that looks, and so I'm going to leave that there. Now, obviously, you see that the only thing that this applied to were those two little dots that we selected, her eyes. It did not apply hue and saturation to everything else. So all of these adjustments that you can put in can be applied to an entire layer, or they can be applied to a specific selection in that layer, which makes this extremely handy for us to use. Now, we've already changed the name of this at the beginning. We called it period, last name, hue, saturation, adjustment layer. So we can simply Command S, or you can go to the File menu and choose Save. And then you can go and do a File Save As. And of course, we need to change the format of this to a JPEG. And hit Save for that. And click OK. And then you are done with this file, and you'll be able to go to the next stage of the challenge, which is to do some of these on your own.